The Greek historian and philosopher Plutarch has left behind several texts which form part of the basis for our understanding of both the rise of the Roman state and the fall of the Roman Republic. His writing often took the form of biography, and arguably his most famous work is the Parallel Lives, which pairs a Greek and a Roman in order to shed light on perceived moral failings or to bestow praise on both men for qualities that the two were thought to share. In the life of Lucullus, which recounts the actions of Lucius Licinius Lucullus, a Roman general and statesman who served in the Third Mithridatic War, Plutarch records something strange happening during one of the battles, which a paper published in the classical journal includes in a list of ancient accounts of UFOs. The title of said paper is thus Unidentified Flying Objects in Classical Antiquity, and it is what inspired both this video and the title of said video. I am not joking, nor am I intending this to be clickbait. That is the actual title of an academic paper published in an academic journal. So, what is this mysterious account? Well, Plutarch gives a brief sketch of the Third Mithridatic War, during which Lucullus engages the forces of Mithridates VI, king of Pontus and Bithynia, and during the fighting, one of the other Roman generals, Marcus Aurelius Cotta, who was also the other consul at the time, the second being Lucullus, took the opportunity to attack. The plan seems to have been something along the lines of Lucullus engaging with land forces while Cotta primarily would attack with naval forces, but he lost 60 ships and apparently 3,000 or 4,000 soldiers, and then took refuge in the city of Chalcedon. Lucullus approached the enemy army, but seeing the size, apparently held back. At the same time, Rome was engaged in a bloody war with Sertorius in Spain, and Sertorius had sent Marcus Marius to Mithridates as a military advisor. Marius challenged Lucullus, and the two armies then drew up ranks. Plutarch then recorded the following. But presently, as they were on the point of joining battle, with no apparent change of weather, but all of a sudden, the sky burst asunder, and a huge flame-like body was seen to fall between the two armies. In shape, it was most like a wine jar, and in color like molten silver. Both sides were astonished at the sight and separated. This marvel, as they say, occurred in Phrygia, at a place called Otriae. This translation of the original Greek comes from the Loeb Classical Library, a collection of all the classical texts of Greece and Rome with the original language on the left-hand page, and a more or less literal translation of the text in English on the right-hand page. That being said, what is the event being described? Well, unfortunately, it probably is not a UFO, but the truth is possibly more exciting. The religion of ancient Rome was fairly well engaged with what we would understand to be omens and divination. There was a type of priest known as the haruspics, meaning diviner, who was responsible for examining the entrails of sacrificed animals in order to judge whether it was conducive to success or not to undertake certain actions like giving battle. Examining entrails, however, was not the only form of divination practiced by the Romans. Augurs were another form of diviner, and these religious professionals were trained to interpret such things as thunder, lightning, the flight of birds, etc., in order to determine the will of the gods or if the gods were displeased. What Plutarch records in his Parallel Lives is probably a form of otherworldly sign called a prodigy. So in discussing this, it is extremely important to make the distinction between omens and prodigies in Roman religion and Roman magic. These are both understood to be signs implying the course of future events, or hinting that something good or bad may potentially happen, and they both usually occurred in public, although omens did not necessarily have to. But unlike prodigies, omens were often considered more important to the private individual than to the community as a whole. A prodigy is a similar phenomenon, but it is on a different level altogether when it comes to Roman religion, magic, or popular superstition, because it was believed to be a public event. What's being described in the text is an amphora, a large jug usually designed to hold wine, among other substances, and Plutarch's description of the amphora as being like molten silver is definitely strange, but given that prodigies were meant to invoke images of things beyond this world, it is, on the other hand, perhaps not so strange after all. This sort of thing, because it was a public event and not a private one like an omen, means that they had to be addressed publicly. It's not entirely clear what, if anything, was done to address this particular prodigy, but it's not unusual to read in Roman sources about people experiencing panic during events like an eclipse, coinciding with what was written in prophetic texts like the Sibylline books kept in the Temple of Jupiter in Rome. Prodigies were taken as signs of divine anger and usually required some sort of monstrous level of atonement, like human sacrifice. Unfortunately, for this particular prodigy recorded in Plutarch, this is really all that can be said for certain about it. That is, that it was a prodigy. His description fits the theme of Romans believing that fantastic or bizarre events happened just prior to more natural, although no less drastic events, such as a bloody battle that took place that day between the forces of Lucullus and Mithridates. If nothing else, this was a sign of the horror and bloodshed to come.